This month's PBCS update is called Two Guarantees in Life, Taxes and PBCS Updates. For those of you who are new to the series, we just take some time to go over the latest releases for PBCS, and we are joined today by both Bob Ussett and Ryan Kohler. They're senior managers within our Oracle EPM practice. Bob has over 5 years of experience working on Hyperion implementations within healthcare, financial services, retail, and consumer products. Then we have Ryan, who successfully implemented a variety of complex projects within supply chain, healthcare, and manufacturing over a number of Oracle EPM projects. During the presentation today, if you do have any questions, please feel free to just type them up as we go, and we will address those at the end of our presentation. And from there, I'll hand it off to both Bob and Ryan.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, this is our monthly webinar series. So as we know, Oracle will release monthly updates each month of the year. And what we're doing is we're really going through that checklist and that release readiness guide, going through the new enhancements and functionality releases, and really trying to do that testing for you so that we can kind of cascade that information to our clients, our potential clients, and just kind of a large user community here. So that hopefully you're ready to go for when these changes are moved into production. So before we get started with the April release, I do think we wanted to follow up on a couple of the questions that we had from last month's session. So one of them specifically was around workflow implementations. So there were some enhancements to the workflow procedures on the cloud last month that were released into the cloud environment. So the specific question was, how many clients are you guys currently implementing the workflow solution with? And just as a reminder there, I think we have definitely implemented workflow at multiple clients. I will say, though, personally, the times that I've seen it work well is when we keep it simple. So, maybe one group of users kind of rolling into an overall owner of a forecast process or a budgeting process so that it's not too complex. I think if you add too many levels to the workflow process, it can kind of, unintentionally lock certain groups of users out of the system and really create more issues for the administrator of the system in the long run. So again, I think simple is the best approach there, as it tends to be with a lot of different solutions there. And the second question we had was around the Oracle Cloud support. So specifically, I think the question was around how receptive have you seen the Oracle support been for the cloud service offerings. And I would say that we've actually seen pretty good support so far. I know we've submitted multiple tickets the last few months, even just requesting more information on specific functionality or enhancements within the release. I know even this month we submitted a ticket to request a delay on our production deployment because we wanted an extra week to test our functionality for the April release in our test environment first. I know we had a couple of back and forth emails, Bob, but ultimately they were able to drive that home for us and delay the release. So overall, I think a pretty positive experience so far. So now that we went over a review of the questions from last month, why don't we go into our webinar content here. So let's get into what is PBCS first, obviously, for those who might be new to the software here. So PBCS is Oracle's planning, budgeting cloud services. So it's really the state-of-the-art planning and budgeting, forecasting processes here. But really, what you're getting with PBCS is really low maintenance costs, low startup costs to get you up and going with the kind of industry-leading forecasting and budgeting tool set. The other thing you're going to get is you're going to get the newest, latest, and greatest releases month to month. So that's great. In the past, maybe you had to wait to decide if you wanted to upgrade to get some new functionality. Obviously, as we continue to present the monthly updates, you're going to see the new functionalities automatically pushed into your system. The nice thing also with the PBCS instances are it's compatible with virtually all different types of software, including Office 365, which is great. Ultimately, kind of decreasing your cost. So we did want to point out too, don't forget about the enterprise version here. So PBCS is where things started. It seems like a lot of the functionality that is included in these latest releases is really kind of targeted at EPBCS and some of these specific modules. So just as a reminder, EPBCS is basically providing you with the financials module, the workforce module, the CapEx, and the projects module, all kind of pre-built functionality that introduces some customizable approaches there too. So let's get into why you're here then. So let's go over some of the new releases here with the April March or April release here. So one thing we did want to point out, we heard this from a couple clients of ours. There is a known issue that took place during this release. So when they moved the April release into both your test and production environment, actually, all of your FR security has seemed to be removed. So we're kind of doing some additional testing on that, but we've heard from actually 2 different clients that they just added that security back in themselves because they don't have very customized, super detailed report security. But certainly if you do, let us know, and we can do some additional investigation for you. But again, I think this is a good example of some unanticipated impacts of some of the enhancements that they're releasing month to month here. So I think fortunately this probably wasn't a major showstopper, but still definitely some frustration from the user community. So just wanted to point that out. And then here are kind of our new in March updates here. And I like it's March here. Looks like this slide needs a little updating. Obviously we're in April here. But the April content is accurate here. Let's go to this next slide here. So our first enhancement for this April release is actually pretty cool. So as always, it seems like the last 3 or 4 months we've actually received an EPM Automate version upgrade. So in order to get this command available to you in your environment, you do need to download the latest version of EPM Automate. But once you do that, you can now leverage the mask data command, which is pretty cool. So it's really just one command that you can run through EPM Automate, and it will basically encrypt all of your data for you. So a couple of things around this, though, is I would definitely recommend if you're going to test this, or if you find a use case for this, make sure you back up your data first. This is key. So there's no going back from this. And also, this impacts every plan type or database in your application. So you can't decide that you want to do it for one cube, but you can't you don't want to do it for another one. So you can't just separate that out and say I want my income statement to be encrypted, but I don't want my balance sheet, for example. But what's cool with this is a couple of use cases that I just kind of thought of as going through this is, say you're in a testing cycle and you have a workforce app or something with some sensitive information in the database, and you want to bring the full data set down to your test environment for testing. What you can do here is you can run this mass data command, bring all the data down into test, and then you can actually have users have a full data set and not have to worry about any security, right? And then obviously get to maybe some security-related testing later on in the UAT cycle. I think this is some pretty cool functionality here. I'm interested to see where they go with it, to see if they actually do provide some additional enhancements down the line where you can maybe customize by database. But again, for now, it's the entire app, so just keep that in mind there. This next enhancement here in the April release, actually pretty consistent with some of the updates that we've seen in prior releases here. As Oracle continues to roll out a larger cloud footprint, they're basically expanding their single sign-on process. So they are using a SAML 2.0 linking process here, so you can actually link into your Active Directory, your organization, have one sign-on process for PBCS. If you have other Oracle Cloud products, like anything in the Fusion suite, that would also facilitate that. And now this specific enhancement is around NetSuite. So, for those of you who don't know, Oracle recently acquired NetSuite, so they're just kind of expanding that into their product suite here. The next enhancement here is also kind of an add-on from the last few months. I believe it was the February release where they introduced the concept of activity reports. They've been kind of releasing subcomponents here month by month after the initial release and just adding some functionality here. So this month, what they've really done is they've included Financial Reporting Studio, or actually the financial reports developed through FR Studio into the scope of what is tracked. So basically they have a top 30 worst performing user interface objects that can pop up in your activity report, and FR is now included in that list. So basically any user activity that's taking longer than 10 seconds and that falls in the criteria of top 30 would fall into this report. So I think a nice, easy way to take inventory of some of your FR reports that might be taking longer than you would like. And I think they can help pinpoint maybe some problem areas in any organization's environment. And if there are certain reports that are at the high level of that list, maybe you can evaluate the report design and potentially get that down from a minute to 10 seconds or something like that. So I think just kind of some helpful tool sets here into isolating some potential issues within your application. So the next enhancement here, or inclusion in part of this release, it's although it definitely impacts PBCS and EPBCS, I would also say, this is just kind of across the board, right? So even if you're an on-prem user, there was a new SmartView release that just got released in April, mid-April here. So look through some of it. I've downloaded it personally, and the majority of the changes are, or I should say updates, are really around some PowerPoint reporting. So it allows you to actually take a data form and interpret that in a kind of more of a graphical interface. So I'm not sure, how many people are using PowerPoint with SmartView, but there's some cool functionality there. As it pertains to the cloud environment, though, this release is specifically gearing up for S-Base on the cloud and also tax reporting cloud. So we're definitely seeing integration and continued integration with the new SmartView releases, and definitely a concentration on cloud-related functionality there. So this next piece that was included with the April release is specific to EPBCS, and this is actually going to be specific to the projects module here. So basically what you can now do is perform revenue recognition, what-if analysis with some of the pre-built functionality. And so basically you can kind of analyze different revenue recognition and what that actually pertains to for different contract projects here. So ultimately, I think the goal here is to help the decision-making process and for taking up a kind of a contract project here. I did add a little snippet on this slide, so I'll kind of let you read through that. But basically, it's also simulating some new US GAAP requirements here for contract projects. So if you are an organization that uses EPBCS and specifically this projects module, some definite added functionality there. So along the same theme here, again, hitting EPBCS. So you're going to see a lot of these, newer releases have a ton of enhancements that are directly related to EPBCS here. This one being specifically around the financials module. And so what this is really doing is it's allowing the administrators of a system to add custom categories for expense drivers through the application configuration menu. So what this can ultimately do is simplify the process that, where you would add new categories. So you wouldn't need that dimension editor to do this. It would simply be kind of the wizard that you would use with application configuration. The nice thing here is members are then added to the appropriate hierarchies and the appropriate data forms automatically. So, it's, depending on how customized you want to make this, I think those are some of the benefits of EPBCS, is everything is so intertwined that when you make updates, it kind of pushes them down where they need to be in the application. Now, I would say, a caveat to that too is if you want an extremely customized application, you also, really need to understand kind of what's happening in the background of an EPBCS application, because there can be, a lot of different touch points. And so eCapital can definitely help you, evaluate, some of those potential solutions. Just wanted to mention these high level too. So some additional enhancements to the projects module. They've added some additional forecast prep rules, some new options to the data copy interface, and some new options to kind of the overall projects processing. So, not a ton of detail here. We really didn't jump into too much testing on this one, but just kind of wanted to throw that out here. And then the last one that I'll go over before passing it on to Bob here, and this one's actually kind of cool. So Oracle has actually included an export exchange rates template for you. So if you are in an application that supports multi-currency, planning and forecasting, you can go to the application screen here and go drop down actions, and you can import exchange rates. That would be kind of, export exchange rates. That'd be kind of the first part of this process. And if you look there in that notepad screenshot, it'll just kind of spit out a nice file for you, and you can actually fill that out and then re-import it. So just a really easy way to get updated exchange rates into the system. I think also, if you wanted to share the exchange rates that you have, in your planning application with, external applications, for reference, a good way just to export them from the application. So a couple of good use cases there that we thought are actually some pretty cool functionality. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Bob for the rest of the release notes for the April release.
Thanks, Ryan. So continuing on here, so another feature that is now available in this release is related to data push or smart push within the applications. So you're now able to go into smart pushes that you have created or any new ones that you're going to create in your environment, and there's just a checkbox when you go in there for your options, where you can now exclude dynamically calc members as part of that push from one plan type to the other. So this could be helpful in simplifying the definition that you have within the push from one plan type to the other, and it may also help improve performance, as now no longer will that data integration look to evaluate dynamically calculated members, and it'll only look to push stored members between different plan types. So again, this feature is very easy to implement. You can go to one that's already been set up. You can simply click on it, and you click the options button, and you can then just come in here and click that checkbox to exclude those dynamically calc members from the push. Another feature here and this is an application setting that you're able to change. So you would set this in your settings and displays. Your system settings and defaults. So you would set this here, and a new drop down that we have available that we can see in the red box there is we're now going to have the ability to drill in on shared members. So in previous releases in Hyperion Planning, you would have a shared member that maybe what contained other rollups in different areas of your application. And you didn't want to add all of those members because maybe there were a couple hundred that would make up that shared member. When you would hit that shared member level in that alternate hierarchy, you would not be able to drill below that member to see what made up that amount. It would just kind of stop in the hierarchy at that point. This new feature, by switching that option to yes, you are now going to allow all your users to drill through the application, and when they hit those shared members in those alternate hierarchies, it will actually allow them to drill into those and actually see what makes up those totals. So, this can be a really nice feature for users who are doing ad hoc and they want to see what costs or dollars are going to make up that subtotal that could be there. In the past, there would have to be some SmartView or Excel manipulation to kind of get that member to think it's back in its main hierarchy to drill in. And now going forward, we should not need to worry about that. You should be able to drill it directly from the alternate hierarchies. So really a great feature from an ad hoc standpoint. So another feature that's part of this is around some server properties that we were able to set through for FR. So on-prem, through FR and planning, there were several configuration items that you could set at a server level that we no longer have access to now that we're in the cloud service. So that's kind of locked down. You're not able to remote into servers and change properties or anything like that anymore. And I know in some instances there's been situations where our clients have really leveraged some of these server level properties that could be changed. So this is actually a really promising enhancement that we have here. So these properties are more generic in nature. I don't think that we see a lot of these getting changed in our client base, but again, you're now able to go in and change these three properties that are related to FR reports. You're able to change a missing values equal formula. So basically what that means is a zero in a member in a report formula would now get treated the same as pound missing. That can be important for suppression or layout or other things that are happening in FR report. Filter by security, that would basically mean the users have the ability to see members that they do not have access to. And then maximum connections, which is going to be how many times will a report refresh to kind of get information, which is really necessary if you have multiple grids in a report. So that's high level on those, but I think the bigger takeaway from this process here is Oracle is listening and they have heard that there are server level properties that people out here have been wanting to change. And this is that first step to getting there. So here it is with FR. Ryan and I are excited to look in other releases to see if there's going to be things that are related to planning as well. But again, I see this as a really positive step forward for Oracle to, again, allow you configuration at what historically was at a server level for our applications. So what's next is also related to reporting. So in the new release now, if you go and you click on your reports module, you'll actually notice a prompt for POV checkbox. And what that will allow you to do is if you do not have that box checked, it will not prompt you for member information that may be necessary for reports. You can see that is down in the bottom right. So in our revenue report, we have a prompt that pops up that asks us to give scenario, unit, or department information. If that is not checked, what it will actually do is it'll take whatever was previously populated in your POV. So if you were on a form and the POV was populated with forecast, that's going to automatically populate in your report if you don't click that prompt for POV. Or if you're navigating from report to report, it's not going to prompt you multiple times for that POV. So kind of a nice feature for our end users to kind of get that screen that a lot of times people are just clicking continue on to move forward, and really gives users the ability to just click from one report to the other more seamlessly and have that data available to them. So another one we have here is another integration. I know we've been seeing these throughout previous releases as well, and this one is related to a Fusion, the Fusion Budgetary Control and Encumbrance accounting. So high level what that is for others, it's really a tool used to help prevent overspending. It allows for some controls for procedure to pay transactions. Those controls can be set up at accounts, projects, and a resource cost. You know, the tool is not included as part of your subscription to the planning and budgeting cloud service. It really is just a separate offering that Oracle has available. But essentially, as part of the lease, what they're describing is it now integrates with data management, which is, again, that is a free tool that you get with PBCS. And with them integrating with data management, what we are now able to do if you do own both these products is you can actually pretty seamlessly and simply share data between those applications. So if you're budgeting and forecasting information that can be meaningful and helpful, and maybe some of your controls that are necessary in your Fusion product, you could push that data, and vice versa. If there's a lot of information in that, again, in that Fusion product, you can push it over into planning. So kind of get the full circular path, sharing data between the two, all through that data management interface, which comes free with PBCS. And we also have something on support coming back to that, so we will be touching on this slide again shortly here. So another release here, more informational than anything, out on the Academy module that again is part of your PBCS, where you have a lot of information as far as how-to documentation, a lot of videos on how to do certain things. There is also information out there that Oracle is defining as design's best practice, and they're basically just saying that they've updated this information. So feel free to go out there and take a look. It kind of provides a high level how Oracle recommends running a project and getting your application set up to be created. This is a really, very, very high level. You can probably read through the whole thing in a couple minutes. Just high level how to set up a project, how they recommend setting up a project as you're moving forward with your application installs. So finally, the last one here is there's nightly maintenance that Oracle is doing, so it may just be taking backups of your application, and maybe I believe the services stop and restart just to help from a performance standpoint and clearing some of those caches. But you can actually change, and you have the ability as administrators to actually change when you want that to happen. So, if you don't want it to happen in the middle of the night because you have a big presence in a, with foreign users that are on different time zones or different parts of the world, you can always adjust that to run at a time that works best for you. So basically, it didn't used to incorporate daylight savings into this. It will now do that for zones that accept daylight savings as, that actually incorporate that, because not all time zones in the world actually follow daylight savings. But if it does, it'll actually follow that going forward, help with some confusion when that daylight savings starts. The caveat here is if you want it to take effect, you do have to go into that tools and the daily maintenance, and you do have to update it just one time just to make it take effect. Otherwise, it will not incorporate daylight savings until you do that. So minor change, but again, kind of an overview on our ability to change when our application will become unavailable for generic Oracle updates on a daily basis. So those were the enhancements. It was a pretty big list this month. I would say, definitely the biggest one this year. In my memory, it's definitely one of the biggest ones we've had in at least the last 12 months. There's a lot of information here. I'd recommend going out to, we'll have this video posted online if you need to review certain slides or information, definitely do that. I know this was a lot of information that we were trying to share here from a features standpoint. So some quick support updates, nothing new here. Standard interface, the desktop interface that is no longer going to be supported at the end of this year. So we've been saying this for a while now. Start your adoption towards that simplified interface. You can do everything you do in the standard interface. You can do a little more than you can in the standard interface. There's some releases only given in the simplified. More importantly, how to get to a form, how to open a report, slightly different than it is in that standard interface. So managing your change control around that with your user base, understanding from an application administrator how to administer your application. Now is the time to start getting comfortable with that and get ready for that process at the end of the year. Next, another one we've been communicating for several months now is the Reporting Studio desktop client. So that interface we use to create and maintain our FR reports, that is set to be phased out as of next month. So you have one more month now to get a feel for the Web Studio, which really is very, very similar, if not exactly the same, to the desktop version. Again, there's some tweaks. The screens will have slightly different clicks possibly to get from, a way to edit in the desktop versus the web version. So this is your chance last month here, go out, do your best to get familiar with that Web Studio, because the desktop version is not going to be supported starting next release. And then finally, from a support update, something that is new. So again, we were talking about how data management is continuing to interact with the Fusion products. And what this means for the Encumbrance product here is they're no longer going to support file integration between that tool and your planning and budgeting cloud service. So where before you could have file integrations to interact between the two, you now are going to want to replace that with a data management, which really at the end of the day should save some headaches and simplify the process when you share data between these applications. But basically starting in September, that's going to be the only way that we can interact with these two tools, sharing data between the two. So, very important to start looking at this. If you're integrating between these two tools, this is not going to be something you want to put off until the end. Realize after it's no longer supported, you can't share data, and you're left scrambling at that time. I would strongly recommend reaching out if you have questions or looking into this on your own, because September is not that far away. It's important to plan a process to incorporate this new functionality between our applications. So that wraps up our webinars here. Again, I know it's a lot of content. I hope it was helpful to have us try to explain it to you in just a short 30 minutes here. Again, go out to the eCap website. All the videos, not just for this month, but other months have been posted. Feel free to review and reach out to us if you do have any questions. With that, we did have a couple questions roll in. I'll take the first one here. So I know Ryan had talked about, don't forget about enterprise planning, budgeting, cloud service, and someone asked, so someone has an existing non-enterprise cloud user. They're curious what it would take to upgrade to enterprise. I'm sure there's quite a few people thinking about that out there. As we continue to go through our releases, we see half, if not the majority of the releases specifically targeting the enterprise cloud service. And if you want to take advantage of these features that are coming out, you need to make sure your app is capable of having that. So really your first step you have to do is you have to talk to an Oracle rep. The licenses are different between the standard service and the enterprise service. So you're going to have to talk to your rep. There is an incremental increase in costs based on what we've been seeing recently in sales and purchases that are happening around the enterprise option. It's less than whatever is posted on the Oracle website from a default costing option. It's a lot more reasonable than I think people might think. So that is number one. Got to make sure your app is in compliance with the enterprise tool set. But then after that, it is very easy to just configure configure those modules and those enhancements right in line with your application. So it doesn't even necessarily mean that you'll have to delete the application that you have currently. It may mean that you're able to just leverage certain functionality that the enterprise offers on top of the model and planning process that you've developed in-house to date. So if you have any questions on that, this is another great opportunity for Ryan or I to talk to you specifically about your environment, kind of get a feel for what it would offer you and kind of give you some feedback on if we do think it would be a good fit for you to move to that enterprise option. I see we have another question here. I don't know, Ryan, do you want to field this one?
Yeah, sure. So the second question is specifically around the EPM Automate utility, so the new version, and around the mass data command. This question is, can you customize the mass data command to mass data for just one database? So just to clarify, right now it is all or nothing. So when you use that mass data command, it's going to be for the entire application. So that's really why we encourage you, if you are testing this out or if you do want to leverage this functionality, make sure you back up all of your data first. And then it probably makes the most sense to do that in your test environment as well, and then try running that mass data command there. But as of now, it's all or nothing. I'll be curious to see if they include some additional syntax there with this command to facilitate, one database at a time. But for now, it's all or nothing.
All right, I think that concludes our Q&A portion as well as our webinar today. So I know Bob mentioned, but if you do have any other questions and around capabilities of PBCS and EPBCS, please do reach out to us directly or visit our website. And as he did mention, we will be posting today's presentation as well as previous presentations. So if you ever need to review any information, feel free to just check it out on our blog. Other than that, just want to say thanks for taking some time today to learn more about the updates, as well as thanks to Bob and Ryan for taking some time to review those for us.
Thanks, everyone.